Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and we are reading Obsidian Butterfly by Laurell K. Hamilton. I am absolutely loving this book. We're about 3/4 of the way through now, and I am so glad that my husband has been pressuring me to read this, and I decided to choose this one as book of the month. I think, I've noticed when I'm doing the questions, it's not really so much based on the story, like it's the more character based and like the choices they are making, which I love. I love a good depth to a character, so I am enjoying this so much. It's not near as like steamy as I was expecting. Like there's definitely moments, but it's definitely not near as steamy as I thought. It is a little bit disturbing in some scenes, like pretty gory and horrific. So there is one scene we're going to talk about today that was a bit much. And I was really surprised the author went there. You don't typically see that too often, but we will discuss that later. I will give a trigger warning though, it deals with babies, and so if that's going to be very upsetting for you, I'll warn you again before we get to that question, and you might just skip ahead because yeah, it is kind of disturbing. I'm not going to go into too much detail though, so you should be fine. But if you haven't been reading this book and you decide to, just be aware of that. Like the author definitely goes really dark in this book. Um, and so that's something to be aware of because I was shocked for sure, but really enjoying this, and I can't wait to get into the discussion questions in just a moment. But as always, before I do, just a reminder, we do our weekly reads every Wednesday, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. We also do a throwback Thursday where I revisit some of my kids books that I have on my shelves, and then that will eventually turn into a kids corner. And then I also do a series Saturday where we are currently making our way through the Dresden File series, which has been a lot of fun. Although I have to say, reading this book, there's a lot of similar themes. And the Dresden Files, as much as I was enjoying them before I started this book, they don't hold up quite as well now that I'm reading Laurell K. Hamilton's book, because I think, even though there's similar themes, I think she did a lot better as far as the depth of characters and the storyline and everything like that. Like the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher are just very, quick, fast paced, like light, enjoyable reads. Like they're not light, but they're easy. They're easy to read and just follow along. Where there's a lot of depth to Laurell K. Hamilton, at least this book in specific, but I'm sure her other books are very similar, and so I can't wait to read some of the others. But before we get into the discussion questions on those, just a reminder, this week we are finishing up The Angel's Command by Brian Jacques. I haven't actually even started this yet, which I need to. I chose to read one of my books for that I got for the ABC challenge, which if you haven't seen those videos, definitely check those out. So I am going to start this today, and I'm so excited. It has pirates, it has a Labrador, so I mean this is right up my alley for sure. And then this week we will be starting Lost and Found by Jacqueline Sheehan. And this is one I've read before, but this video will come out next Wednesday, which is the day before Thanksgiving, I believe. And so I'm really excited to revisit this one. I am so thankful for my dogs. I don't know what I would do without them. And so I thought this was a perfect one to revisit the week before Thanksgiving. And then the week of Thanksgiving, we are going to be starting Wyoming Giant by John S. McCord. I chose this one because next month, the book of the month is based on my mom. I chose it based on her, and she is a big like Western fan. She loves horses. She loves John Wayne, and so I thought, this one's been sitting on my shelf for years and years. I don't even know where I got it. I think it was gifted to me, and it's just been sitting there. So I really am excited to visit this one and see if I enjoy it or not. It is the third novel in the Baines clan, and so hopefully it's does pretty well standing alone by itself, but we'll see. Let me go ahead and read the synopsis for you. It says Darnell Baines and his sons had left their Louisiana farm to escape the carnage of the Civil War. Darnell had raised his boys to shoot fast and work hard and treat a lady with respect. But living day to day, never settling down in one place, takes a toll on the strongest of men, and surviving on the frontier is a long, lonely battle. Working in a prestigious New York law firm suits Luke Baines just fine. He's winning more fights with words than he ever did with his fists. In fact, he's winning too much. Someone's pulling some important strings to guarantee his reputation, and he wants to know who. He gets his answers when the New York power brokers appoint him federal judge of Wyoming territory. And suddenly, Luke Baines is knee-deep in land schemes and violence as the cattle empires of Texas move north. The same cattlemen muscling in on the kin of Helen Sands, the beautiful new Mrs. Luke Baines. The politicians think they bought themselves a judge, but they'll soon learn that the honorable Luke Baines, the Wyoming giant, is not for sale. So yeah, really excited to check this one out. It's pretty short, so it should be easy to read, right after the holiday and all that. So really excited for that one. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Obsidian Butterfly. We read chapters 33 through 48 this week, so those are the chapters we are discussing. As always, there is a certain level of spoilers because we are discussing these chapters and these characters. So if you haven't read it and you don't want any sort of spoilers at all, go ahead and jump off now. Otherwise, stick around. It might entice you to pick it up. Or if you have read it, definitely, think about the discussion questions and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But we'll start with number 33. With as much as Bradley stands behind Anita, why wouldn't he leave her alone at the crime scene? And so it was kind of protecting both him and her. I know he said he just couldn't take that chance, but really it was protecting both of them. And I think, you know, if he had left her alone, that would have put them both at risk because somebody could have said, that he left her alone and maybe faked like something happening, maybe saying something got taken or something got disturbed, even though it hadn't, because we know Anita's not very popular with Lieutenant Marks, and I would not put that past him. And so I think that's really why, like, he just could not take that risk, and it wasn't just for his protection, it was also for her own, because if he had left her alone, somebody could have said that something happened when it didn't. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. Number 34. Bradley warns Anita her file has drawn attention. How dangerous could this be? So he was talking about her file getting attention, drawing attention from somebody maybe in the government or something like that, somebody higher up. And it could be very, very dangerous. She clearly doesn't have any interest in working for the government, but they can, find ways to kind of coerce her and make her work for them. And she might, be put in situations that she has to make difficult decisions in. And also, I mean, I don't know for like in real life, but in fiction and such, you're only safe as long as you're an asset and not a liability. And she could easily become a liability to them. And so it would, get very sticky very quickly if she were to go to work for the government. And even if she doesn't have that interest, I could see them trying to pull strings and, kind of like I said, coerce her into working for them even when she doesn't want to. So and 35, we talked previously about Anita and Bernardo's ethnic struggles. How do they swap places in this chapter? So last set of chapters we talked about it, and basically, it seemed like Anita can kind of pass off as white, and kind of gets around, that, but it seems like she didn't really belong either side, where Bernardo, looks very strongly Native American, and he kind of uses the prejudice he gets and such to his advantage. Well, we learn in this chapter that Bernardo is actually mixed as well. And so he's not fully accepted on either side. And Anita mentions, like, normally you could tell somebody's heritage, like it's there, where why your looks are there, like your manner of speaking and like culture and such isn't there. And that's when he brings up, and so he never really fit in on either side, so we see him kind of swap places. And Anita, even though she doesn't fully fit in because she can pass as white, she, still has that connection to her heritage and such that Bernardo doesn't. So we really see that swap, and it really kind of shows that even though they kind of face different prejudices, their struggles because of their ethnicities. I can't talk. Anyway, their struggles are pretty much very similar, even though it presents itself in different ways. And number 36, Anita agrees to go in as Bernardo's girlfriend. Why didn't she resist more? I think it was really she just kind of recognized the logic of what I think it was Officer Ramirez was saying. Like, he knows the locals, he knows the scene, and she recognized that, and she understood that yes, it wasn't okay that she couldn't just go in there on her own, that she had to have a man and belong to somebody, but she recognized that's where she was. That's the kind of the area she's in. And plus it would have taken a lot more time to go in there and try to fight that and stand on her own. And they probably would have, harassed her a lot more, and it could have ended in a fight. Where going in on Bernardo, it saves that time, and that's something that she doesn't have a lot of. So she kind of needs to save that time, and it saves kind of the aggression that might occur otherwise. So, and number 37, would Anita have complied if Nicky Bacco hadn't come in when he did? And so basically, they're trying to get her to prove that Bernardo is her boyfriend, and they ask her to do something that was very intimate, essentially. And I don't think she would have complied. Like, she was already kind of getting fed up with everything. And so I don't think she necessarily would have complied, but it would have ended very badly if she had it. So I do think, she recognized that she did need to talk to Nikki Bacco, and so maybe she would have, but honestly, I don't see her going quite as far as they wanted her to take it. So I don't think she would have, but I'm still learning Anita, and that's the thing about coming in, in the ninth book in the series. Like, if we had read those other 8 books, we would have had a better sense of Anita. But I really wanted to read this book, and so I don't think she would have taken it that far, but I don't for sure know, just because we're still really learning her, and we don't have a full sense of her quite yet. So, and number 38, Ramirez is almost proprietary over Anita after only 2 days. Why is this? And I think it's just basically the interactions they've had with each other. Anita has shown a vulnerability with him, which is out of character for her. And she's also opened up to him a lot, which kind of fosters that intimacy between them. And so it's kind of fast tracked where their relationship, I mean, I know there's kind of a lack of relationship there, but there is something there, and it kind of fast tracked that and created this sense of intimacy. So I think that's really why he kind of feels proprietary, even though it's only been 2 days, just because of some of the signals she's been giving off for sure. So, number 39, even with how this chapter ended, was Rigby underestimated? And I 100% think he was. Like, I didn't realize it was him. It was the same character until the end of the chapter. And I was like, wait, that's the character, they were kind of poking fun at and making jokes, and Anita kind of felt was like soft and such. And like, he really stepped up to the plate. Like, I was surprised. So I 100% think they underestimated him, and I think there would have been a lot more death if he hadn't been involved. And so yeah, I think that he definitely was underestimated. And number 40, this is the trigger warning. This is where the babies kind of come into play. Just, I'm not going to go into depth on that one, but that way you have some context. And so it says, this chapter was beyond horrific. Why did the author go past that line? And I think she went past that line just to show how truly horrific this monster, this evil was. Like, it was beyond a monster, it was pure evil. And I think that's why, like, I mean, you just don't typically even go there, even though they're fictional babies. Like, I don't know, it was hard because I still, reading that scene, it was like, these are some people, like, they're new babies, and I mean, like, the moms and the dads, like, especially the moms just having these babies, and then that whole scene, like, I mean, it was intense. And I think she did go there just to show how purely evil this thing was. Like, it wasn't just a monster, it wasn't just like it crossed that line too, and I think she went there just to show how truly evil, like, what Anita is up against. So, and 41, if Anita had known what would happen to her, would she have made the same choice? So chapter 41 was like 2 paragraphs. And so this kind of ties into the previous chapter, chapter 40. And I do think she would have made the same choice regardless. Like, there's already a certain inherent risk going into any situation that revolves around what she does for work. There's already that inherent risk, and so she's already kind of facing that every day. But I think, in this situation, like, she needed to stop this thing at any cost. And so I think she would have made the same choice regardless. And I don't think she would have even hesitated, even whether she knew or not. Like, obviously she didn't know. She had no concept of what would happen. But I think the choice would have been the same even if she had. So, and 42, why did the doctors allow a witch to treat Anita? And so I had to kind of remind myself that this is a story verse, not real life. In the story verse, like, zombies and witches and vampire hunters and vampires and all that, they are commonplace. So I had to remind myself of that. And so it's not uncommon, that they know that there's witches and such. And this witch is married to one of the doctors, so that does help give her some credibility, I think. And honestly, I think the biggest thing though was they were just stumped. Like, they didn't know why this was happening to Anita and why they couldn't keep her going. And so I think they were just stumped at this point. They had no logical explanation, and so at that point they were ready to try anything. And like I said, it's not like in the real world where I know a lot of fiction has that real world element, and so it helps us really connect. But like I said, in this story verse, like, that's commonplace. There's witches, there's vampires, like, it's accepted. It's not quite so taboo, and so I think that's where them being willing to use a witch kind of came into play. So, and 43, what caused Edward to tell Anita about Baco's timeline? And I think, just his trust in her, because he asked her multiple times if she really felt like they needed Baco. And she said, yes, multiple times. And so I think it was just that trust, knowing, sorry, I kicked the table. But just knowing that she needed him, and knowing that Baco wasn't going to talk to anybody else. So as injured as she was, like, he recognized that if she said that they needed him, they needed him, and so she needed that information. That, one, he wasn't willing to talk to anybody else, and two, he had given a timeline. And so she needed to make a choice whether her injuries were going to keep her there or she was going to go despite her injuries. And number 44, Anita talks about how no matter how many times she saves the world, the monsters keep coming. How accurate is this to the forces of good and evil in real life? And I think it's completely accurate. Like, there's always bad, and it's always a fight. Like, good is always in a fight against bad. And I think the fact that it's represented in fiction so often just really shows that. And it kind of reminded me, like her saying that reminded me of there's like the time in Buffy where Buffy's just like done, like it's never ending. I watched Charmed a lot as well, and same thing, like it was never ending. They were tired because it never ended. Like they were constantly fighting no matter how many times they saved the world. And in Supernatural too, like I absolutely love that show as well. And so we see it represented over and over, especially in, like Supernatural fiction and such. We see it represented over and over, and it does really represent the real world in that aspect though, because there is always bad. Like no matter how hard we fight and try to be good, there's always bad, and it's always a constant battle to maintain that balance. And so I think it was completely accurate, and it does get exhausting sometimes. Like sometimes it feels like no matter what you do, um bad things always still happen. And so sometimes it is really hard to hang on to the good and not get exhausted and burnt out because it's a constant battle. Number 45. How can Olaf fully be trusted on the case after his veiled threat to Edward? Um, and it kind of made me think of that saying that there's, thank you. She brought me her toy. That there's, no honor among thieves, but in this case, it's kind of opposite. Like there's a certain honor among monsters. Like there's a certain etiquette they follow. And that's kind of what it reminded me of. Like, as long as he's on the case, and they're working on the case, he can be trusted because they're united in that. But that's where the line ends. As soon as the case is done, like they're no longer united, and they kind of graded against each other enough that now it's done. Like there's nothing, to stop either one of them. And so I think, like I said, there's just kind of that honor and that line that even among monsters you don't cross. And so even though they're technically not really allies or anything like that, they have a common enemy, and a common goal, and so that's keeping them, in line together. So number 46. If Harpo had called her bluff, would Anita have gone in alone? And I honestly don't think she would have, just because of how severe her injuries were. And there was no way she could defend herself at all. So I think if he hadn't called her bluff, or if he had, I'm getting it confused. If he had called her bluff, I think she probably wouldn't have gone in. I don't think she was truly bluffing because she knew like there was no chance with as injured as she was. She needed the boys as backup. And so yeah, I think as badly as she needed Baco and she needed to talk to him, I think she recognized like it wasn't going to end well. And so the information would have been kind of useless if it doesn't end well because she would be the only one that has it. So I think that's kind of, she recognized that, and I don't think she would have gone in. Let's see, number 47. Why did Anita feel pity for the vampires despite their crimes, but none for Baco? And I think it was because with the vampires' crimes, there was a certain humanness to them. Like, don't get me wrong, they were evil, but humans can be that evil too. So there was a certain humanity in their evilness, I guess, and the crimes that they committed. Where with Baco, like he went beyond that again. And I also think, she didn't see the vampires doing what they did. Where in this case, like she sees the what Baco did, like it's right there in front of her. And so I think that's kind of where, she could have pity for the vampires, but she couldn't have it for Baco. And last question, number 48. If Anita hadn't surprised everyone by running, would the situation have worked out as well as it did? And I don't think it would have. I think it would have ended a lot differently if she hadn't run and taken everybody by surprise. I think, it probably would have ended a lot more bloody, and it also ended up buying time, and then the police ended up showing up, which was great because then they didn't have to really handle it themselves. And so I think, she obviously assessed the situation and recognized, one, she's injured, Bernardo's injured, and they're kind of outmanned, which normally wouldn't be too big of a deal except the injuries. They fight monsters. What are men gonna do essentially? But they recognize, that the other people had the upper hand, and so by running and taking them by surprise, she was able to gain the upper hand, and then she was able to use that advantage to kind of give the boys the upper hand too. So I think, running, like, very very smart on her part, like quick thinking. And yeah, I'm really really enjoying her character and how she gets out of these situations and such. But that's it for those chapters. This week we are going to be reading the final set of chapters. I'm kind of sad about it because I've been enjoying this book so much, which I did not expect to enjoy it quite this much. And I absolutely love it. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to kind of finish it up and see what this great evil is. We kind of have a better idea of it now, but there's still a lot of questions left. Again, if you're not already, please do subscribe and hit the bell notification. Tomorrow, the book of the month is going to be introduced for December, and I'm so excited for that one as well. Again, not necessarily a book I would have chosen on my own, and so far, I mean, choosing these books based on, the people closest to me is really working out. And so I'm really excited to read the one we're going to be reading in December, and see just what my mom loves about it so much. So definitely check back tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.